we won't say another word, will we?
No, not at
all. Greetings. Peter from Universal Dork here, back again, and today I wanted to take a moment of your time to talk about a pretty wild and crazy movie that I saw just a couple nights ago at a movie night that I did at the shop. It's a mid-2000s, actually 2006 horror slasher movie starring Crispin Glover,
Simon Says,
and directed by William Dear, who's most well known for Harry and the Henderson's, a movie that I completely love. It's one of my favorite movies from the 80s. So the second that I figured out that he was behind it, he goes by Bill Dear in this movie instead of William. I knew that I was probably in for something special. So I had never heard of this movie before. And for fans of Crispin Glover, this one is definitely a real treat. Like the remake of Willard, which I really enjoyed personally. I thought that was a really fun one. And clearly, Friday the 13th Part 4, which is hands down my all-time favorite Friday the 13th movie. Now, his role in there is pretty bonkers, and he returns to the horror genre here 100%. He even brings his father along for a little bit of the mayhem. So his father's got a cameo. It also features a whole cast of what I like to call complete numbnut characters. These characters in this movie could be comparable to another movie that I also covered recently called Cemetery Gates. Total bonehead numbnut characters are everywhere in this movie. I'm not even sure if there is a character in this movie that isn't a numbnut. But this one definitely delivers on the blood, gore, and if you're a fan of Scooby-Doo style horror movies that pull no punches, this one will be right up your alley. Crispin Glover here is a full-on unhinged maniac.
Waldo's handbag.
And he plays sort of like a dual role, Stanley and his twin brother Simon. And as you can imagine, the most devious of the two is Simon. Simon and Stanley live in the woods here. They've got a real troubled past. We get some flashbacks that show them as children, and that's where we see Bruce Glover appear in a very convincing role. And we get a little bit of backstory as to why Simon and Stanley are so fucked up in the head.
Simon Says.
I like Simon Says.
Simon Says smoke yes.
No, Stanley. Tedious is bad. Make you crazy.
You're already crazy.
We flash forward years later and we see that Simon is running some shitty sort of gas station convenience store in the middle of nowhere. And a group of moronic campers show up and they're looking to buy a bunch of booze. They're total stoners. Basically a group of teens looking to party, and one of the girls that's along for the ride here is looking for the ultimate sort of paradise-style camping location to take everyone to.
Food, beer, and
beer.
ice. But listen, mostly, we need you to direct us to the most righteous campsite, in the most remote spot, in the deepest, darkest part of the woods, where dangerous men do dark deeds.
I can do that.
And of course, Crispin Glover has the perfect spot for them to party down and have a whole night of debauchery. And like I said, these characters are very reflective of Scooby-Doo. And when I say that, I mean the main stoner in this movie actually has an uncanny resemblance to Shaggy himself. He actually wears sort of a Shaggy-style shirt. I would not be surprised if this was 100% intentional, that they drive around in this sort of Mystery Machine-style van as well, except it's covered in Grateful Dead stickers and Bob Marley. In many ways, you sort of just can't wait for all of these people to get killed. But as the story sort of moves on, I will say some of them sort of grew on me. And I noticed that the other people watching the movie, it had the sort of the same effect here. But you cannot get too attached to any of these morons in this movie, because literally anyone at any time could die one of the most pathetic, gruesome, and very inventive deaths. This movie's got a lot going for it in that way, aside from having Crispin Glover front and center, going full maniac.
Time to have some fun.
He is completely unhinged and deranged. and he's running around the forest. He's got his one-liners that he does. It's always Simon says you didn't do this, or Simon says you didn't do that, and then he will do some sort of bizarre kill. A lot of stuff that I can say I've never seen on screen before. Now, his weapon of choice here is the pickaxe, but the way that he utilizes the pickaxes here is pretty impressive and also incredibly idiotic to watch all of his kills unfold, and I loved every second of it. In the forest, he has these machines set up, like some sort of concoction that maybe he put together from old bits of steel. These giant machines that he uses to hurl pickaxes through the air, impale anyone who happens to be in the way. So he's sort of targeting them, looking through a little spyglass, and when he wants to kill people, he'll utilize these machines to do the damage. And watching these machines in action is pretty fun, but it also is utilizing some sort of pretty shoddy CGI to get the effect of the pickaxes flying through the air, whirling around, people trying to dodge out of the way. So this movie really showcases Crispin Glover at maybe his most insane.
Now, that's what I call a fatty!
He's around pretty much every corner. He seems unstoppable in a way of some sort of almost supernatural style killer like Jason or Michael Myers. And I think that this is always very important for a good villain, is that you just want to see him get his ass kicked.
Yeah, if you think you're having fun now, just wait!
I mean, at pretty much every moment that he appears on screen, I just wanted to grab him and slap him up a bit. He is so annoying in the best way. By the end of the movie, you're just not quite sure who is going to make it to the end, if anybody. So the movie sort of showcases on its cover that Blake Lively is a major part of the cast, which is not true. There's a cameo from Blake Lively, who's known for, Gossip Girl. But the interesting thing is that the whole Lively family apparently seems to be involved in this thing, and I don't know why. You also have Lori Lively, who's her sister. You have Ernie Lively, their father, and then you have Robin Lively, half-sister, who is also the star of Teen Witch, which I immediately recognized. Very interesting. I'm not quite sure why this is happening in this movie, but they're all sort of involved and in it together in some capacity. It's written by William Dear as well, and produced by Ernie Lively, so I guess that sort of explains why there's so many Livelies in the movie. Ernie Lively is not in it that much. I'm not sure why he had to make this a family affair. And of course, there is sort of some ridiculous twist that you can sort of see from a mile away coming, but it's really fun to watch it all unfold. Now, I'm definitely not going to tell you that this is the best horror film of the 2000s or one of the best slasher movies of all time, but I will say that if you are a fan of Crispin Glover, this could be your favorite horror movie, because he is going full Glover in here.
I like this guy.
He is completely off the rails, hamming it up.
I'm not gonna let Simon hurt you. Why should he have all the fun? What are you gonna do to me?
Crispin Glover.
I'm gonna kill you!
I never see him phoning it in, no matter what he does. He's always there giving it 100%, and this is no exception to that rule.
You forgot a say.
I think Simon Says in certain points is a cut above a lot of the competition at the time. The way that they execute some of these kills is just so over the top and so dumb. I gotta say, I'm gonna give Simon Says some credit for trying to go the distance here, even if some of the kills end up looking a little bit pathetic with their effects that they use. It's tongue-in-cheek enough, and it really did seem like Glover was having a great time here, and I definitely need to do some deep digging because I couldn't really find too much info on how the whole thing came to be. But I'm very intrigued as to why this one has sort of flown under the radar. So I'm starting to think that 2006 and the mid-2000s is actually a pretty solid era of horror, because a lot of those movies are aging like fine wine. Another movie from 2006 that I've always loved, I saw it back in the theater, is a British movie called Severance. And it sort of had some similar themes going on. They were a really good double feature to present together. So if you've never seen Severance from 2006, go check it out. It's sort of like The Office meets the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. it goes in a bunch of really different directions, and the comedy with that one is, like Simon says, really sharp. So really cool, solid entry into the slasher genre in the 2000s. And it's a notable one because Crispin Glover teams up with William Deere to bring, oddly, a slasher movie in the mid-2000s. So check this shit out. I think you're going to have a good time with it.
It's time Simon said, smoke like a choo-choo train.